Hi everybody, this is lesson number 5. We speak about The Dead, the short story The Dead by James Joyce. Get your book, Coniston, page 346. The Dead belongs to the collection of short stories Dubliners, published in 1914, set in Dublin. This is the most known story and the most precious example, considered the most precious example of modernist work in the 20th century literature. In this story, Joyce reflects on art, on artistic objectivity. He thinks that an author should represent human beings, their feelings, their emotions, their perceptions, their thoughts in an objective way. So the power of art. In this story, Gabriel Conry is the protagonist, and there's another character, his wife Greta. They are both guests at a party organized by two aunts, two old spinster aunts of Gabriel, and they are celebrating Epiphany. So there's a party for the feast of Epiphany organized by these two aunts. Joyce describes the society of the time, the class divisions, the religious convictions, and the atmosphere is suffocating, stifling. After the party, Gabriel and his wife go back to the hotel, and she starts crying. She's very sad. She starts crying. He asks her why she's so sad, and she answers that it is because she listened to a song at the party. She heard this song, and this song made remember her of a former love, of a boy who was desperately in love with her and who died for her. Or obviously this had happened many years before. At the end of the story, Gabriel looks out of the window. It starts snowing, and he realizes that his love for Greta is not the same it was at the beginning. It is now an insignificant thing, above all compared to Michael Fury's love. The boy who had died for his wife, was called Michael Furies. This boy had died for her, so he was desperately in love with her. So Gabriel understands that his love compared to the love of this boy was nothing. In this moment, in this very moment, he has got an epiphany. So while he is looking out of the window and he understands this very important thing, he understands it is an extremely important moment of his life, because he understands he's not in love with his wife anymore, and she is not in love with him anymore. The first epiphany was the one she had, because also during the moment in which she heard the song and she understood that she was still thinking about this boy, this love, this former love, also this was an epiphany. So, the themes and the symbols. The title The Dead could be interpreted in two ways. The dead could be Irish people, Because remember what we said last time, that the Dubliners is a collection of short stories that are all set in Dublin, and the characters are all Dubliners. So the Irish people in general that are incapable of reacting against the passive and oppressive atmosphere of their story, of their world. But this dead could be also Michael Fury, the boy who had died for Greta. So that the dead could be the Irish people who are incapable of reacting, so they passive accept their condition, and the dead could be also Michael Fury, this former love of Greta. In this story, I repeat, I tell you again that there are two specific moments of epiphany. Remember that the epiphany is a sudden revelation, a moment during which the character understands something very important of his life, of his or her life. So this happens to Greta at the party, and this happens to Gabriel in the hotel. So the final image of the fallen snow, because remember we said that he had this epiphany while he was looking out of the window and it was snowing. So this fallen snow could be a symbol of death, but also a kind of universal cleansing, which brings a new consciousness of renewed life to Ireland. Now I like to analyze the Ulysses. The Ulysses is the first novel written by James Joyce, published in 1922, and it is considered his masterpiece, a milestone in modern literature, because it is an original and innovative work. It takes place in Dublin as well, but on a single day. Everything happens in 24 hours. There are three characters, Stephen Dedalus and Leopold and Molly, who are husband and wife. The title Ulysses refers to Homer's Odyssey. In fact, Stephen is Telemachus, Leopold is Ulysses, and Molly is Penelope. There are 18 episodes, and these episodes correspond to the adventures of the Odyssey. The story takes place in Dublin, and there are many features, many novelties. First of all, the use of the interior monologue and the stream of consciousness, that are the two techniques, the two devices used by the modernists at the beginning of the last century. And these are taken to the extremes. Every single thought of the characters is recorded. And these emotions, these perceptions, these feelings are linked by free association. There is the absence of any conventional use of dialogue, no dialogues, absence of punctuation, absence of pronoun references. No real plot. There is any real plot. There isn't a linear plot to follow, because the reader follows the character's life, everyday activities, and there is no distinction between important and unimportant moments. So every action becomes relevant and representative. So all these features are pretty important because this technique enables the reader to directly witness the characters' inner lives. So this is an original narrative technique used by the novelists of the beginning of the last centuries, the modernists, who wanted to create something original, but also difficult to understand, because they wanted the readers enter the minds of the characters. So in this way, through these two techniques of interior monologue and stream of consciousness, the reader could have a more complete understanding of the character, could understand their most intimate thoughts. Remember, stream of consciousness and interior monologue are considered very often synonyms, but they are not. Stream of consciousness, is the process itself, continuous flow of thoughts, feelings, and perceptions that fill the mind of a person. These thoughts and feelings are not linear, they have no logical way, are spontaneous, free associations. So the mind jumps from a topic to another, from a past memory to a future event, from a positive to a negative thought. All thoughts have a real significance only for the individual, and they are connected to the personal life of the characters. The interior monologue is basically the words that the author uses for explaining the stream of consciousness. So the interior monologue is a similar idea, but it's not the same thing. There is a fundamental difference. In the interior monologue, the author makes a choice and focus on some aspects of the character. So he chooses some thoughts, some emotions, some perceptions, only the ones that are necessary for the development of the story. Okay? So, stream of consciousness, everything, every thought, every emotion. So, everything has got a significance for the individual. With the interior monologue, the reader is guided because the author presents only the thoughts that are linked with the plot. Okay? So, stream of consciousness. Nothing is filtered. Every thought is presented to the reader, whether it is relevant to the plot or not. And the thoughts are presented spontaneously. There's no logical order, and the stream of consciousness is the process itself of this flow of thoughts. While the interior monologue are basically the verbal words used for explaining the stream of consciousness. Molly's soliloquy is the final part of the novel that is divided in 18 episodes and is one of the most famous passages of the novel. Here Molly, the wife, is the main character and the protagonist, and she is a dominant female figure. Remember that she represents Penelope, but while in the Odyssey Penelope has got a submissive role, a passive role. In this novel, Molly expresses her thoughts, her needs, her desires, her emotions, her feelings. So she represents the liberated female figure of the time. Okay? She is a dominant female figure, and maybe Joyce wanted to highlight the role of women in the society. Not maybe, for sure. So this soliloquy, you have the soliloquy at page 351. So please read it carefully and listen to the excerpt. You have got the CD, page 351 from the Ulysses Molly's soliloquy.